This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WBC Talk Radio. I am your host, Stephen Moore, economist, and I want to bring on as my next guest, Jonathan Williams, who is the vice president at the group called ALEC, which represents about 3,000 conservative state legislators around the country. ALEC is an indispensable organization. And in addition to being an executive at ALEC, Jonathan is also the co-author of a report that comes out annually called Rich State, Poor State, a ranking of the states in terms of their economies and their policies. Jonathan, thanks for joining this afternoon.
Hey, great to be back with you, my friend.
Okay, so let's get right down to it, Jonathan. Your report is out for 2024, and you're having your big conference coming up next month, and I believe you're going to be in Denver, where you'll present a lot of these results, but I wanted to give a little sneak preview, if I may, to our audience. And as I think a lot of people in our audience know, that I co-authored that report with you and Arthur Laffer. But let's start with the best. You know, we do the rankings every year. Give us the top 3 or 4.
Well, Steve, this has been a really consistent story at the top of the Rich States, Poor States rankings, because for all 17 editions for our economic outlook ranking, which includes things like taxes and regulation and labor policy, things we know matter for growth, Utah has been the number one state for each and every one of these 17 years.
Every year.
It's been an incredible track record. It really has. I mean, nobody has been able to dethrone them.
So that is pretty amazing. How many years have we done this now? 16, 17, something like that?
17 as of this year. And, from the start, though, I mean, it's kind of interesting to say, in year one, it was when John Huntsman Jr. was governor of Utah, they created a flat tax. And they were one of the first states in America to go from a progressive income tax to a single rate flat tax. One of the best things states can do if you keep your income tax. Of course, as Steve, you and I both talk about all the time, the best flat tax is a 0% rate flat tax and get rid of the income tax altogether for economic growth. But Utah from year one did that. And then they come back with our good friends like Senate President Stuart Adams on the ALEC board and many other of these great legislators keep cutting the rates. And it's just been so impressive between that and their property tax reform and pension reform. Utah's been an economic powerhouse. And by the way,
they are a right to work state, right?
Their right to work. I mean, they've just got so many great things, but I mean, it's not just us saying they're number one. They are the fastest growing state in America over the last decade when you look at population growth. And even I think U.S. News and World Report said now for the second year in a row, they're number one for their economic measure. But we like to say we were for Utah before they were for Utah. We've had about 15 years head start.
And by the way, Utah is also the youngest state in the nation in terms of the average age. So they have kids in Utah, something in the northeastern states where so many of our listeners are, there's just a shortage of children. Okay, give us the 2 or 3 other top achievers.
Well, and so it's a regional feel in the top 3 anyways. And I think there's a lot of competition between these states and that Utah's been a pace setter. But then right behind it at number 2 is you have Idaho, a state that has also become a flat tax much more recently in 2022. But a lot of deregulation, a lot of tax cutting there, another big growth state that they're just getting tons of Americans voting with their feet coming out of California and other big government states towards states like Utah and Idaho. And then number 3, one of my personal favorites to talk about is Arizona, in a state that has become a flat tax state of only 2.5%. Arizona with a 1-vote Republican margin in the Senate and a 1-vote Republican margin in the House. And then you had former Governor Doug Ducey. They created this flat tax. They did universal school choice, which is, I know you and I have talked about that a ton over the last year with our Education Freedom Alliance, that Committee to Unleash Prosperity and ALEC have been partnering on. Arizona combines the best of both worlds, where you have economic freedom and education freedom, just like Utah has done. And so really a mountain western feel to the top 3 for the best economic outlook states in America.
And all these states are doing really well economically, too. I mean, anybody who's been to Arizona or Utah or Idaho, you see so much of the growth in these states. I mean, these ideas really work. Okay, now I hate to do it, but we have to talk, Jonathan, about the states that are at the bottom of the heap. And why don't you give us the starting from which state came out worse this year?
Well, Steve, bad news here for your listeners because it's actually New York that comes in dead
number
last.
50.
50th out of 50.
God. So what does New York do wrong? Tell me what they're doing wrong in New York.
Well, you look at the resume there for New York, and, we actually spent tax day, my team and I, in Albany, talking with the legislators about how do you dig out of the hole, right? And the first way to do that is stop digging it deeper, obviously, and stop passing these ridiculous new tax increases that are being proposed and new regulations. But you look at New York, and it's some of the highest income taxes across the board, some of the highest business taxes, some of the highest property taxes, of course, not a right-to-work state, egregious high levels of minimum wage, things, a policy that you've written about for decades, Steve, that sounds good, but is the absolute worst thing you can do is a training wage for young people coming out of high school and college looking to find their first job. So tons of big government policies. And, of course, you look at the overall spending and why these taxes need to be so high in New York. Yeah. It is the spending is abysmal. I mean, unbelievably high spending in the state and city of New York.
So, Jonathan, we only have a couple minutes left to appreciate you taking some time out of your busy weekend. We've got a lot of listeners in New Jersey. How did they do?
A little bit better, but still bottom 5 or 6 states there. New Jersey comes in at 46th out of the 50 states. I mean, not a surprise. Vermont at 49th, Illinois, your home state, at 48th, and California at 47th. So not a lot of surprises because there's
a lot of work to be done.
Philosophy.
So, Jonathan, I think I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal this week that New Jersey just raised their business tax rate, and I thought New Jersey already had one of the highest business tax rates. Am I getting that wrong, or?
No, you're 100% right. New Jersey already had one of the very highest business taxes, and that corporate income tax surcharge that was supposed to go away. They're raising taxes. They raised them during the pandemic. I think the only state in America during the pandemic to raise taxes. Now they're doing it again.
Amazing. Oh, Jonathan, we've got a lot of work to do in these northeastern states, no question about it. By the way, California is also a laggard as well, right?
Yeah, they are absolutely 47th. And the ballot initiative that was supposed to try to tackle these high taxes, it sounds like the California Supreme Court just tossed it off the ballot, as you may have seen in just last 24 hours.
Amazing. I mean, it's just so sad that these high tax states and the high spending states and the high regulation states just don't get it. I mean, they're doing so much damage to their own citizens. That was Jonathan Williams, folks, who is the vice president at the group called ALEC, and the report, I want everybody to go look it up on the web, is called Rich States, Poor States. Full disclosure, I'm one of the co-authors of that with the great Jonathan Williams and Arthur Laffer. If you live in New Jersey, if you live in Connecticut, if you live in New York, you got to either get your government to reform itself or you got to get out of these places. I guess that's the message. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
Long Island is more exciting than ever at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. Get ready to zoom into some serious cash with Zoom Ball every Wednesday in June. Win up to $500,000. 1 point equals 1 entry. 2 lucky winners will be drawn at the top of every hour from 1 to 5 p.m. to play Zoom Ball. Discover the excitement at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. If gambling is a problem for you or someone, please call the 24-hour toll-free helpline at 877-8-HOPE or text NY.